Beyond Crazy, Joan Hay. On Overcoming Stigma. On one wall of her home office, Joan Hay has hung, just below her college diploma and her 2 university degrees, the piece of paper that committed her to a psychiatric ward in 1996. I framed it in a certificate frame, she says with a wry smile. It's matted, and it's signed. It almost to me looks like a piece of art. It's also a statement, a reminder that what we've overcome is every bit as important as what we have accomplished. Now a high school teacher working with students who have learning disabilities, Hay has told few of her colleagues and friends about her psychiatric history. She worries, like pretty much everyone who's been where John has been, about being judged, and yet there is the hospital certificate on display for anyone to see. Interesting thing is, nobody does. People come in, they look at that one and they look at the others, Hay says, and they don't see it. It's as if no one can believe that a woman possessing a diploma in recreation and degrees in English, literature and education, to say nothing of a tall and athletic presence, could ever have been considered mentally ill. And yet, she was considered ill enough, in fact, to be locked up for 2 weeks. She is still struggling with the ever-present issue of who deserves or needs or can be trusted to know such things. It's such a huge part of my life, and only a few people know, says Hay, 36. Part of me wants people to know, to try to break the stigma, but the other part is very much from my father, Don't say anything, don't tell anybody. Telling her story here, then, is a major decision, bigger even than deciding to display that certificate on a wall. Choosing to fight stigma is for Hay and many others an important step in her own recovery. The hardest thing about recovery, she now says, is understanding that it's up to you to take responsibility for yourself. When you feel so bad mentally and physically, the last thing you want to do is take responsibility. I wanted to cut myself and wait for everyone else to figure out my life. 4 years have now passed since Joan Hay was last officially mentally ill. In that time, she has, with the guidance of her therapist, figured out why she drank and why she cut herself, so that she no longer needs either of these forms of release. She has, with great difficulty, weaned herself off all but one of her medications. She still considers herself to be in recovery. To the outside world that once seemed to be foreign to her, Joan Hay is today just one of the many hard-working, tax-paying citizens of a prosperous, mid-sized Canadian city. And yet, because of where she's been and everything she's overcome, she still faces possible rejection. She still struggles, in other words, with stigma, both self-imposed and not. She does not, for example, date much. She doesn't trust the response she'd get if she said, I actually spent 2 terms in a psychiatric hospital. She's hamming it up. I wouldn't present it quite that way, but that's basically what it comes down to. Will that person accept that, or will they run screaming? That's something I've been struggling through. I don't see myself as acceptable, damaged goods maybe. I've avoided that part of my life definitely because I don't know how to deal with it yet. Call it anticipated stigma. Hay senses that her colleagues believe she can't handle pressure well, that she is somehow too fragile. I'm not viewed as solid. I could melt at any time. I've heard a few times, you've got to be careful with John. And the reality of that, ironically, is that I probably have gone through more than they have. I've gone through so much and I'm still standing. She worries she's judged more by what people assume she cannot do by what she definitely can do. I can spot a kid who has an emotional problem, who's depressed, who's manic, who's suicidal, she says. I'm just so aware of mental health issues. Many of the children she teaches have emotional or behavioral problems, and they seem to know implicitly that with her they won't be judged. They have told me that they're cutting, that they're not eating, that they are depressed, that they're bipolar. I'm just their sounding board because I do know where they are coming from. And she knows by what she herself has been through how to help. One girl, now in grade 11, had done battle with Joan in a classroom for 3 years. This kid hated me. This kid threw things at me, but I gave her boundaries. I told her when she was being a brat, when she was great. I told her she was really smart. Last year, when this girl returned from March break, she brought back a gift for John. It's a Mardi Gras necklace. I'll keep that gift forever, John says, still moved. I can't believe it's the same girl. John Hay has recently convinced school management to set up a mental health room for students who need sympathetic listening and links to community outreach programs. She knows that for kids to feel okay about using the room, both teachers and students will have to be educated about stigma.